Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Welcome to the program, friends and listeners. Today we are so lucky to have with us a hero of many, a child of the 80s.
A legend.
Philip Bouchard. Yes, a legend. Thank you, Aaron. Philip Bouchard, the designer of Oregon Trail, the Oregon Trail. Holy cow, this is one of the most seminal games, kind of like Doom, I think. This was what I was thinking. I was thinking Oregon Trail is kind of like Doom. It survived through the ages, runs on pretty much anything. I guess unlike Doom, though, like my kids, all three of my kids have come home from school at one point during grade school. Yeah, to tell me that they're learning about the Western expansion by playing the Oregon Trail. They've never come home to say we're learning about anything playing Doom, but I don't know. Maybe that would happen at some point. But what a thrill, Philip. Thanks for joining us.
And one other thing, what did you
yes.
get for Christmas this year from me?
That's right. Was it the Switch?
The Switch version of Oregon Trail. Yeah, that was my Christmas gift to this guy.
That is 100% accurate. How are you, Philip? Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm doing fine, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm so thankful you guys invited me.
Thanks for coming on.
Well, the pleasure's ours. I wrote down a whole bunch of questions that I wanted to ask. And first question, have you ever had dysentery?
What?
It's not a real question.
Not quite. Maybe. Still working on it.
Well, and I was thinking about this too. Like, I don't know if there's. I was wondering whether we should explain the Oregon Trail.
Well, we should explain dysentery too, and why that's funny. Well, some people that don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, the context. And I was surprised when I was looking on. So kids, if you're not familiar with the Oregon Trail, I can describe it, or Philip, you want to describe it?
I'd like
what
to
is
hear
the Oregon
your description.
Trail? Okay, I can do that. The Oregon Trail is a game in which you role play the journey through the West, circa, oh gosh, this must be, is it pre-Civil War? It's like 1800s?
Yes. 1740. It's 1848.
1848. Okay.
Off 100.
Thank you. And let's see, there's the journey does it go from the Midwest all the way to the coast of Oregon?
That's right. It starts in Independence, Missouri.
Okay. And does it actually go through the Donner Pass?
Interesting question. Not the versions from my time frame, because the Donner Pass is on the California Trail. So those that branched off halfway and then headed down to California had several options, one of which was Donner Pass.
Okay. So along that journey, there it is a game, and there's interactions that you have to survive and make it, and not all parties make it in the game, and that it is not just game, but it's educational in terms of immersing the player in the situations, characters, and outcomes of what those in the 1800s were experiencing during that Western expansion. I don't know. How was that? How was that as a description?
Well, not bad.
All right on. What did I leave out? How would you?
Left it with a game you get to play in school. Like that's how I explain. It's a game you get to play in school.
Was that its intention? Was that its intended purpose when it was made?
Its purpose was to be educational and entertaining at the same time, and so it's tied closely to that chapter of American history of westward expansion. And originally, the original concept by Don Rawitch back in 1971 was an educational game that could be used in schools, although he originally envisioned a board game. Originally, then he and two colleagues created this version that ran on timeshare systems, text only, a very simple game, but brilliant in its concepts for 1971. And that first generation kicked around in various iterations until the version I led the team on in 1984 to 85. And our team wasn't just me; it was a team of folks put together this Apple II version that became what people often call the classic version now. Some people call it the original, but it's not really true. The 71 was the original version. So the classic version was our Apple II version, and that lasted for about 10 years until another generation of products came along under the same name.
Right on. Okay.
I was going to ask, how does ownership work with the game? Like what,
who owns it?
Who owns it now? Is it like...
Interesting question. So Mech was purchased in 1981 by Softkey, going under the name of Learning Company. They were doing a roll-up at that time. They were rolling up a huge, just about all the educational software companies out there. They were rolling up into this one big ball. and that eventually got sold off to Mattel, sold it off to another company, sold it to another company, who sold it to another company. And those rights eventually ended up with a big publisher who then, it in turn is sold off several times. So I think now it's Collins Harper who owns the rights. And what they do with it is they license it out to anybody who wants to make a game on the concept.
Interesting. Okay. So 71, that's, let's see, arithmetic time here. That's 54 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. And this about a month from now, or a month and a half.
You wrote all this down.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just kidding.
No, I did that math on the fly. No AI, no calculator. That's just my, U Chicago math degree kicking in right there.
You're right. The concept's been around for more than half a century, and the Apple II version, its 50-year anniversary will be later this summer.
Wow! Congratulations.
I'm sorry, 40 years. I miscounted.
Okay, 40, but still, that's amazing. 40 years, I think that's roughly the same age as Dungeons and Dragons. So clearly there's a capital C on that classic. And when you say there was a team, so like, wind us back. We've had a few folks on the program that sort of built sort of seminal Apple II era games. In fact, we were just talking about Jordan Mechner in the green room, so to speak. What was it like making games for the Apple II back then? What was your team size, and what were the roles, and what was your role on the project?
All right. So we had 5 of us on the core team. So I'll go ahead and give their names. John Krenz was the lead programmer. Sherilyn Kaplinger did the graphics. Shirley Karen split the research duties with me. And Bob Granvin was brainstorming at the beginning and helping with programming. And then later on, we picked up Roger Shimada, who did the programming of the hunting game. So those first 5 of us then met a lot to do the brainstorming on this product. So even though I was doing the design work in terms of actually writing things down, we would all get together to brainstorm the concepts, both before I wrote up each document and then after I wrote up each document. And the reason I say each document is because I was constantly cranking out documents on this aspect of the game or that other aspect. So we all contributed in terms of brainstorming initial concepts and then also providing feedback on all the ideas that I wrote up. Plus just the fact that these other people took on these other roles of programming, research, graphics, they made major contributions in those areas, of course, as well, by leading each of those areas. So small team, 5 of us, did most of the work. Then towards the end, other people got involved in terms of a lot of QA folks, people who were working on packaging and manual and things like this. So by the very end, we had a lot of people who had their fingers in some aspect of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just curious, like how long did it take to make start to finish?
This was an unusually long time frame for a mech product at the time. We started in early October of 84, finished at the very end of July in 85. So that was almost 10 months.
And is there stuff that didn't make it in that is, like the director's cut would have?
Oh, there is so much that I had in my early documents of ideas that and things that would love to have included, and we just couldn't put it all in. There was several reasons. One was a very limited disk space on Apple II disks. Another was very limited RAM on an Apple II. Another was time frame. We just couldn't, even if we had more space, we didn't have more time to design and program more than we put in. So it was constantly prioritizing. We had all these ideas kicking around and then say, okay, which ones do we think we can actually get done and into the game?
Okay, I'm probably not following here something, but the version you're talking about is was there pixel art for the Apple II? Was there it was a VGA colors, I'm assuming? Because the first version I played was the ASCII version. There was no graphics. Everything was done with characters from the keyboard.
Okay, good question. So the version I worked on had graphics. The Apple II was capable of producing a grand total of 6 different colors on a resolution of 280 by 192. That's the whole screen, and limitations on which colors could go next to each other. So it was pretty. The fact that we were able to actually make anything look good at all was due to the creativity of our graphic designer, Shanglan. But yes, it did have graphics. Well, earlier versions, for the most part, did not. So, for instance, there was an Apple II version that was almost a direct port from the timeshare. It was almost entirely text, except for it had some very crude outline graphics for hunting and for showing a map of your progress.
Interesting. I wonder which version I was
playing.
Wait,
you played a game, Aaron, you played a version that was ASCII art? Like it actually had images that were done with an ASCII art?
Yeah. And and it was on official computers at the school, and and you would shoot with the space bar and it would shoot a little a star, the 8 above the asterisk.
Yeah. So
that's the version I played.
Certainly, the first Apple II version that MEC produced, which wasn't even sold separately. It was part of Elementary Volume 6. And when you press the space bar, you had 8 little dots slowly creeping up the screen while the deer slowly moved across the screen.
Yeah. It was awesome. We loved it. We always hoping we would get hunting. It's so good.
All right. Well, so actually, this is another question that just popped in my head. So you start by working on the Apple II version in, I think you said 85, but there's this text-based version that's been around for a while. Did you get that code, that version? Is there any real relationship other than spiritual between that text-based version and the version that has graphics?
All right. The short answer is that no, we started from scratch. But here's the long answer. That original code base kicked around for 14 years. So the 3 guys that worked on the original, I'll go ahead and give their names: Don Rawich, Bill Heineman, and Paul Dillenberger.
So hold on, time out, Phil. You're amazing. You're amazing that you can remember all. And I hope you guys all get together for like a summer barbecue every year. And
and one person always gets
no.
Well, I have a cheat card here, so
you got our names on there too. That's awesome. Okay. You know what? I love how organized you are, listeners. Philip showed up a little early. Worked out the audio setup before our start time. Awesome. You're the best. All right. So, okay, back to this code has been sort of like, being worked on by those 3 guys for many, many years.
Well, they created the original in less than 2 weeks. It was an idea they had. They did did it really quickly and presented it to some kids in 71, put the code away, and then, it wasn't seen again by anybody else other than those 3 classrooms until 75. Don Rawich pulled this code out in 74, tweaked it to to adjust the historical accuracy of the random events that occur, and then put it onto the MEC timeshare system in 75. And MEC was only founded in 73. That's the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium.
Oh, that's what MEC stands for. Okay.
Right. Although later on, when it got sold by the when the state sold it to a private company, then it changed the last word from consortium to corporation. But in any case, that's Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium. So once Don put that up there in 75, that immediately became the most popular game on the timeshare system. But the only people who could see it were kids at schools in Minnesota whose schools could log into the timeshare system via the dial-up modems.
Right. Can we pause there just for? I know you're on a story thread, but this is fascinating to me as well because, I grew up after, I'm a child of the 80s, and I didn't really get to computers until basically the time frame where you released your version of the Oregon Trail. So this whole period of time in the late 70s, where there were these servers that you could connect to a modem, a completely text interface, looks like MS-DOS or whatever. I never had that experience. Like a lot of our listeners have never had that experience either. But I have this sort of romantic view of what it must have been like. Was it, I mean, were you using the systems? Was it like this kind of dial-up area you could kind of like search around in and find little treasures, and you'd find a game like this?
And say things like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, at this time in the 70s, most of these mainframes that had any kind of educational software on them were mainly at universities. So, for instance, when I first started playing in high school, 71, I had to dial into these different universities. But this was a case where MEC set up this centralized system for the entire state and made it accessible to K through 12. So it was kind of unusual. Okay. Also, most of the people who had the dial-up, they didn't have CRT terminals. They had teletype terminals, which they had the rolls of yellow paper.
There's a printer?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They everything you typed, everything that got typed out was on the yellow paper, and it was very loud. Yeah. And so that's what playing Oregon Trail was like, a lot of kachunkas, but
a lot of
good. So this code base, it got modified a little bit in 75. It got modified a little bit in 78 because they realized that the kids were anticipating that you would have to type bang. So they changed it so you didn't know in advance if you were going to be asked to type bang or pow or blam or something else. Then when it was converted to run on the Apple, in which case instead of a scrolling screen, it had to fit in screens that came a page at a time. But otherwise, it was pretty much the same code base with the addition of a little bit of outline graphics, that was for the hunting, and also the original one allowed you to shoot at people too, which I took out. But and also the map. So then that same code base got adapted to run on a product called Expeditions for Atari 400 and 800, and for the Commodore 64 and the TRS-80. But it was still the same code base. And so the same underlying concepts. Mm-hmm. And it finally got changed when we worked on it, began working in 84. We had a new mandate to do something much more elaborate, but keeping the magic of the original. Also, for the first time, we were targeting home market instead of school market. So we threw out the code base, we threw out the underlying mathematical models, to replace them with much bigger, more elaborate models, lots and lots of details that were not present in the original, to the point that most of the things that people think about when they think about the classic version are details from the Apple II version that came out in 85. The big level concepts were there, that is, traveling from across the U.S. to Oregon, doing some hunting along the way, buying some things at the forts, and running into misfortunes. Those were all from the original. But other details that we think of are from the 85 version.
Okay. Well, so the famous line, "You have died of dysentery," was that in the original, or did you add that to the
T-shirts
85
of
version?
this?
Yeah, the original, and there were no specific ailments. You just got sick and died.
Okay.
So in the version that I designed, I took 5 ailments that seem to be mentioned most often in the diaries, and one of which was dysentery. And each of those 5 ailments can occur with equal frequency. But dysentery is the one that seems to have caught the popular imagination, much more than typhoid or cholera or fever or whatever.
I remember we didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
We didn't know so we would ask the teacher, what does it mean? And they were like, yeah, it's like you just poo a lot till you die or something. And I was like,
that's a good summary.
The weirdest thing. Yeah. So as kids, we were like, you died of pooing. Yeah.
Let's earn our explicit language rating today. Okay, that is all super fascinating to me. Not the least of which is it sounds like MEC, the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, was a state-owned enterprise. Is that right? It was like funded by the state of Minnesota before it privatized?
Yes, exactly. So when I joined, I was a state employee for a few years.
Wow.
And the interest, MEC was, okay, there's a little background here. So MEC had been creating the software for the timeshare system, very simple stuff done essentially by volunteers. No one was getting paid to create that software that went onto the timeshare system. That is the little educational products. The people who got paid were creating like bus routing schedules and enrollment products and things like this. So the people creating all the little fun activities were doing it on a volunteer basis, including the original team of 3 people. They didn't get paid anything for that. So when I got on staff, I got my salary at least. So I was getting some money. So I started out as a state employee. And as we started converting things to run on the Apple, because MEC had this relationship with the Apple, where MEC became the largest Apple II distributor in the world. We were buying Apple II softwares and reselling it at cost to all these different schools all over the state. And that really helped Apple get going. Apple might not have succeeded in those early years if it had not been for its relationship with MEC. But all this Apple II software then coming out, being distributed for free in the state, other states started saying, well, how can we get the software? We'd like to have it too. So MEC started selling it to other states. And so and that became a larger and larger revenue stream. And as that revenue stream got bigger, the state of Minnesota said, oh, you don't need our funding. And they started cutting it back until eventually we got nothing from the state. We were still expected to serve Minnesota in the same way we had, serve all the schools, but not get paid anything from the state, just self-funded by selling software to other states and other countries.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like government at work.
Well, and then eventually they finally decided to sell it off to private investors.
Yeah, I would hope that Minnesota made a tidy profit off of the transaction.
No, they dramatically underpriced it, but then those investors sold it off a few years later and made really big money.
Yeah, that's totally like the government. That's what
sounds like our government. Government at work.
So are you an engineer at the time? Are you like a manager? And are you playing games? That's kind of 3 questions in one.
Ooh.
Sorry, Alex. I don't know if you had one of those. Just like, but what is?
Yeah, what was your professional context at the time? Yeah, were you a gamer as well, or was there such a thing in '85? There was sort of.
Not really a gamer. So my background is that back in the 70s, before there were any personal computers, I got curious about the possibility of computers in education. I thought maybe computers someday could rival film as an important educational technology medium. So I was working on that in the 70s, but on timeshare systems, on mainframes. And I was working with...
And this is in Minnesota? Is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Georgia, but I was in Texas at the time. I was in grad school in Texas. And I was creating simulations for use by college freshmen to help teach ecological concepts. And I wanted to make a career out of that. And after I graduated, I took a year out teaching English as a foreign language in South America. Came back to the U.S. and tried to find a job in 1980. And every place I went told me, there's no such thing as a professional in this field yet. All the software is being done either by volunteers or by professors who come up with an idea and hire, student programmers at minimum wage to throw it together. There are no professional programmers. There are no professional designers. There are no professional anything in this field yet. So I had to wait a year until finally I was MEC was ready to hire its first full-time Apple II programmer. And so I joined them in May of '81. That
was you. You were the first Apple II programmer.
I was the first full-time. They already had a team of 12 student programmers, 6 were in high school and 6 in college.
That sounds like every startup I know, right, Alex? We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit, member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people. Great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160-plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the 4th Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
But they needed someone. I had been studying software engineering. So these guys were brilliant at coding, but some of them had no idea how to organize what they were doing. They didn't know how to, some of them had no idea how to code for a reliability or recode for further maintenance. You know, they said, oh, it's okay if it's spaghetti code. The next person who comes along who has to maintain it, oh, gee, I have to throw it all out and start from scratch. Yeah. So I brought with me, software engineering concepts and led this team. But of course, right at first, these kids have been working on Apple IIs for quite a while. They could run circles around me in terms of actual sitting down and coding it. I had programmed timeshare systems a lot, but I hadn't worked on Apple IIs yet. So in any case, so I came in then as head of the Apple II programming team, but my real interest was design. I wanted to design particularly simulations. And I finally got my chance several years later when I was asked in '84, 3 years later, more than 3 years later, to head up that team, head up that project.
Nice.
Right on.
Well, good
Right on.
job.
Yeah. Was there anything like in your like pre-college, like you're in high school growing up or whatever, and was there anything that made you think about, like, did you have exposure to technology or other kinds of games? I'm guessing back then it would have been board games, or
Timeshare games, maybe.
were there BBSs back then?
Not to my knowledge. Certainly, there were certain board games I enjoyed, and in '71, which was the summer after my junior year in college, I attended my junior year in high school. I attended a summer program that gave me access through a teletype terminal to 3 different timeshare systems that I could program in BASIC. So that's where I learned basic programming, and then I didn't do any more programming until 4 years later. It was '75. I got back into it and got into it in a big way. But it was still the first devices based on microprocessors were starting to come out 2 years after that, in around '77.
Yeah.
You didn't play anything on those? We've spoken to a couple of people that on those, some people would find these like war games where they would send a command and they would type it out,
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
certainly I got exposed to Zork and Advent, which were text-based games on the mainframes.
Hey, you played Zork?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Anybody on the show who's played Zork, I gotta ask, did you finish it? Did you beat it?
I don't really remember. I suspect I did not.
I'm taking that as
really done it.
I'm taking that as an all right. This is going on my bucket list. I'm gonna finish that game. All right.
AI.
Sorry. Yeah, brief. Nope. No, I'm raw dogging
yeah.
it. It's gonna be all me. Okay. Sorry, that was an interruption. I take it back. Keep going.
Well, what was the thread? I forgot.
You were playing games on the terminals.
Like
you
didn't have much. I was in grad school. I was really busy. I didn't have a whole lot of time to play, but every now and then play a little bit of Zork or Advent or something. But so not a big gamer. When later on Apple II, I got really interested in Civilization when that first came out. I loved that.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like when you say you thought of the game as a simulation, as a sim more than an actual game. Is that how you approached it?
Yes, to me, the simulations have to do with how do I put this? Well, often have to do with resource management. So you've got all these different state variables that are tracking all these different things that you can run out of or you could acquire more of. Then you got this set of parallel mathematical equations that are tracking the current amount or state of every state variable over time. And I was doing that kind of programming in grad school with my ecological models. So I took this idea and used it for the Oregon Trail. Now, the original programmers back in '71 actually had some simple state models, some simple parallel math equations to populate those state models. So they already had those concepts. But I just took those and ran with them. So they were like 10 times as big in terms of the number of variables being tracked and the mathematical equations affecting those variables. And that underlies the whole product, the 1985 Apple II version and all subsequent versions.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay. Well, so mid 80s, you'd spend 10 months with a team of 5, build the classic version of the Oregon Trail. At what point did you realize that you had made something impactful? And it's okay if the answer is today when I got invited on this podcast. That's an acceptable answer.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was some point before today.
It was before yesterday as well. But yeah. So we were expected to create something impactful. The reason being, MEC was already famous for Oregon Trail. People were calling it the Oregon Trail Company. But at the same time, it was embarrassing because technology had changed so much from 1980 to 1984. In 80, it was all being done in text and a little bit of shape graphics. It was being done in AppleSoft Basic with no assembly language programming. It was being done without any professionals on the team. 84 completely changed. There were a bunch of companies that jumped in and were producing professionally, produced software. Now it had to look much better. It had to be more elaborate. So our 1980 product was, by this point, embarrassing, even though it was great in 1980. So we needed to replace it. At the same time, MEC, which was very successful in the school market, had not had any significant success in the home market. They wanted to, this Oregon Trail is the one we want to try to go into the home market. So I had a dual expectation. Number one, a product that would actually sell in the home market. And second, something that was a worthy successor to something that was already famous. So we expected to have a product that was successful, not wildly successful, but just at least successful. So the fact that it was much more than that was a surprise. And we, when we released the product in 85, our management decided that we weren't going to release this new one to the school market, which was kind of interesting. So it was released to the home market only at the beginning of August. By the time of our annual teacher conference in November, teachers were furious that this best new product MEC had was not being sold to schools. And so they wanted a school version, which is the same software, just it has teacher support materials attached to it. And they also wanted it included in our site license so they could make unlimited copies at any school that had purchased a site license. MEC finally gave in and said, okay, sure, we'll make a school market version and we'll give you site licensing. And once that happened, it exploded. So by spring, this Oregon Trail, spring of 86, the software was all over schools, all over North America.
Wow. Do you have any idea how many people have played the Oregon Trail?
That's an interesting question. I've never tried to count, but
or how many died of dysentery?
Quite a few.
How many students you killed or sent to their doom? Yeah, I mean, and do you it's got to be bonkers that it's still recognizable, it's still played,
relevant, totally.
Yeah, relevant to this day. I mean, folks in your family, I don't know if you have kids or nephews and nieces, etc., whatever. Is there are you famous in your circle? Are you, do you ever get recognized on the street?
Oh, not on the street, no, but I certainly have had plenty of times where people that I know learned that I was the team lead and lead designer on this Apple II version of Oregon Trail, and they say, "Oh, wow, I'm friends with the person who did that." So yeah, it is. The reactions are rather interesting. And you asked a question about the success of the product. I thought the success was going to be. I expected some kind of success, but I expected people to I expected the product to fade away after about 5 years, and people would not even remember it later on.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that people do remember it 40 years later, to me, that is a huge surprise.
Yeah. That's durability. There's something, this is something very meaningful.
The remakes and all that stuff.
It's very cool. So what did you do after? Did you make more games? Did you not make more games?
During my time at MEC, I didn't have as many opportunities to do original products as I hoped, but I was allowed at one point to start on an original concept, which became the Munchers series, and I worked on that with Steve Tafey, and a number of Munchers became MEC's second best-selling product and the second biggest contributor to the value of the company. After that, I left MEC to freelance because I was told it would be quite a while before I would have another opportunity to do an original product. So I said, well, as a freelance, I can do that. But as a freelance, I no longer had a team behind me. So I was free to pursue whatever concepts I wanted, but I couldn't necessarily build them very easily. Plus, I had no money, so I couldn't hire anyone. As it turns out,
little detail. Yeah.
During the next 6 years, I created 6 more products, all for the Apple II. MEC published 4 of them, and other publishers picked up 2 of them. And they were okay, but they weren't as fun as Oregon Trail, and they weren't as fun as Number Munchers. So then at the beginning of '93, I moved to California and worked for Broderbund, where at first one of my main things there was to kind of fix up the Carmen Sandiego series, which had already been around for quite a few years, and kind of revive it because it was starting to fade. And so I played a key role in that. But otherwise, the time at Broderbund was just so-so. 2.5 years later, I moved on to McGraw-Hill Home Interactive, where we did some great products, but then the company closed down just as we were about to release the products. So, and then I joined Creative Wonders for a year, and then in '98, I finally left the industry. Now, the industry was pretty much collapsing because at that time, all the software was being distributed now on CD-ROMs, and it was being sold on shelves in computer stores. But the internet was now taking off, and people were saying, "Oh, we can get stuff for free. Why should we buy this stuff?" And and all these companies were getting rolled up by SoftKey and other companies, and failing. Everybody in the industry was getting laid off. So there were hardly any survivors that made it through to the millennium there, and the industry basically had to start over from scratch after that. So anyway, I left in '98 and changed careers and began developing, working with companies that were creating web-based business applications for consumers.
So when you say the industry was collapsing, do you mean the educational software game industry? Or do you what industry are you speaking of?
Wasn't that the period of time when everybody was saying the PC's dead, PC games are dead? Wasn't that era?
Yeah, I think so.
The '90s were kind of interesting in that around '93, things were switching very quickly to CD-ROMs, and people were talking about digital convergence and film meets computers, and that those two industries were going to merge into one, film and computers. And so companies were flying high from '93 to '95. And then they started collapsing as more and more companies jumped in. Budgets got huge because people were putting huge amounts of money into the multimedia aspects of all these products, games and educational stuff. And they could no longer find shelf space. So by I think it was '97, '98, there were something like 10 products created for every slot on shelf space. Most products could not even get distributed after they'd spent millions developing them.
So yeah,
doesn't it sound, Phil, I don't know if you pay close attention to the game industry to this day, but like what you're describing happening at the turn of the last century is exactly what's happening today. It's different distribution mechanics, etc. But there's like 100 games for every one that gets discovered, they're all free. So, and the cost has continued to go up. There's a lot of folks who probably aren't going to survive the transition to what comes beyond. So it is an interesting parallel.
Yeah. There's one other parallel, which was the 80 to 84, so real early on here. There were no educational software companies in 80. 82, they finally started creating there was a few things coming out. The industry was growing rapidly. By 84, there were so many companies all jumping in, throwing their hats in the ring. But even though the industry was growing, the pie was getting bigger. There were so many more companies trying to split that pie that it was a bloodbath in 84. And a bunch CBS, software jumped in, spent a lot of money, and then jumped back out again, for instance. So a lot of companies failed in 84. So it's a cycle.
It is a cycle, isn't it? Yeah. So now you wrote a book, didn't you, about about your experience with the Oregon Trail. Is that right? Or the game?
That's true. I've written 2 books. One is completely unrelated, which I'll have to mention the second one in a moment. But the first one was the term is escaping me. An ebook, about the detailing the creation of the Oregon Trail game, primarily focusing on the version that I worked on, but also giving that previous history back to 71 a little bit. That ebook came out, I think, in 2016, and I might replace it with a more updated version sometime soon. But my other book, this one.
All right. So for those of you just listening, Philip's holding up The Stickler's Guide to Science in the Age of Misinformation. This sounds right up Aaron's alley.
It totally is.
I'm guessing, knowing your background, that this is kind of like a pro-science, pro-facts kind of book, or is it different?
Yes, it's.
And what's your opinion on chemtrails? Just because you brought it up,
they're real, dude.
Come on.
Myth.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you, Team Science. Yes.
Y'all are literally the clicky bait stuff right now.
Oh my gosh! Tell us about that book. Sounds pretty cool. Tell us about that one.
The cover's great too.
Yeah.
So after I retired, moved back to Georgia, first thing I did was write the ebook about Oregon Trail, and then I started writing.
And the name of that book is the name of that book. You have died of dysentery.
Correct. Yep. You have died of dysentery.
So it's a positive, uplifting tale of creativity, I suppose. Yeah.
So then I started writing science essays, mostly science essays, and I wrote about 50 of them in a period of a year. And then I approached a publisher with these essays, and they liked the idea, but they wanted me to do something from scratch, where I could recycle some of the ideas from some of the essays, but write a new book from scratch. So it covers about 13 or maybe 16 topics in science, covering both physical and biological sciences, and just stuff that I think most people would find, if you're interested in science at all, some interesting stuff and fairly easy to read and fun.
Right on.
Cool.
Right on. We'll have to check that out. We'll put a link to it in the. I'll give it a look first, but I'm assuming I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be up my alley. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And your career is fascinating. That you've kind of gone through multiple arcs. And you had an early, very impactful success with the Oregon Trail, and you've kind of paid it forward with the book that you just shared with us. Do you have any if you look in the rearview mirror, any threads that have kind of gone through all those experiences that you reflect on and think were formative for you?
Well, one is a curiosity, and I'm constantly exploring new things, things I'm not good at, and try to get good at. Another is that it's been really interesting working on teams and all throughout my career. And working alone, I did freelance for several years, but working with teams has been so much more interesting. When you get a good team, that's way, way better than working alone. Another one is the science and the math. The science. I love natural sciences. That's most of my hobbies are related to natural sciences. That's what I studied mostly in college and grad school, in addition to computer science. And then just the math as a way of organizing how things work.
Yeah. Right on.
So
good. Aaron.
Well, I was going to say right now, what's going on with what you're up to? What are you up to? Are you managing teams right now?
He's retired. Are you retired?
I retired. Yes. So,
congratulations. That's a dream of mine.
Is there a team now in your retirement?
There is a team in the sense that I'm president of my local HOA, but the rest of the board, we're always taking care of stuff. But in terms of outside of the HOA, so my hobbies include wildflower photography, nature hikes, gardening. I really like AI art. We're really getting into that. Science writing. I like to write songs. I'm not good at it yet, but I like to do that. So a lot of hobbies. Oh, and Sorry, I'll just say one more thing, is that I worked out in Silicon Valley until about the time just before I turned 60. And I was working on user interface design for web-based applications. And I found that towards the end, as I was getting closer to 60, people were kind of suspicious, like, do we really want to hire someone who's been around this long? Someone who is, we really want someone who's a digital native. We like somebody who grew up on phone apps rather than computer apps. So it was getting harder to find good jobs. I finally decided, okay, I think now is the time to retire. I'm gonna.
Well, you know what, right there, I think that's a huge problem with the way that software is built today, because so much of the UX in modern software is horrible and broken. And I think if it was designed with a little bit broader of a user base in mind, and with a little bit of a point of view, which it sounds like you really have, which is attention to detail, sort of like correctness in implementation and approach, we'd be way better off. I have trouble sort of like, and I'm not going to throw my wife to the wolves here, but like some of these apps where you got to like go through these complex user flows just to get to to purchase something, it throws a lot of people out.
Yeah.
So
we're canceling a subscription.
Yeah, my gosh, you can't even. But you touched on AI really quickly when you said AI art, and I'm curious, what you think of how things are, like what the sort of the state of our digital landscape is right now, with the kind of approach of all these AI tools, content created by AI, and what our future might look like. It's maybe even with a thought about education too. It seems like that's an area that will eventually kind of cross paths with a lot of the AI stuff that's happening right now. Any thoughts?
I have found that I am probably no better than the average person in terms of predicting the future. I certainly found that I was going through all these technological changes back in the 70s as we were transitioning from mainframes to personal computers. And I never had any idea what was coming ahead. I was good at inventing simulations and things like this, but I wasn't good at saying, what's the state of the hardware going to be a year from now or 2 years from now? So same with AI. I'm not sure that I can assess it so much in terms of what's coming down the road, but I can say that I really enjoy creating AI art, figuring out, how to use text prompts to get it to do exactly what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a prompt engineer. I mean, that right there, I think, is a pretty meaningful observation, that it is very difficult to predict. I think a lot of folks, kind of leading up to, you were talking about that period of time when the internet took off in the 90s, right? Like a lot of people kind of coming up through the 70s and 80s who were futurists or science fiction authors or whatever, who were predicting what the future was going to look like, just completely, I mean, for the most part, did not include a future that looked like Instagram or Facebook or even Amazon. And I think we're bound to be in for a surprise as to what our future looks like on the other side of like institutional scale and at like 4 or 5 iterations down the road on some of this AI stuff. I'm sure the results would be different than what we imagined, which is what I think it's what I just heard from you. So I think you're right. I think you are better at predicting the future than the average person. There you go.
I mean, I have some ideas.
Yeah. Let's hear yours, Aaron. What's one crazy thing we're not expecting that's going to happen because of AI? What do you think, Aaron?
Me?
Yeah, you said you had some ideas.
Well, like the book he held up, there's like a bunch of stuff on there that I think the AI is going to like be involved in. Like you have like the clickbait stuff. It's gonna know what people like. Just you and me were having a conversation earlier about hot dogs.
Oh my gosh.
I'm getting hot dog videos.
Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible.
So it's gonna know, like, I know that Alex would probably click on this and then get him to think this, and It's going to be crazy.
I'm a little disturbed that the AI is like the computers are listening to us. And
Yeah,
feeding
they're
you
listening to
ads on
Oregon
stuff.
Trail. I'm going to get Oregon Trail stuff now. in my
Vacation
feed.
in Oregon.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Vacations in Oregon. Dysentery medication.
Oh no. Oh
A
no.
lot of Tums ads.
Yeah. All right, Philip. Thank you for spending an afternoon with us. Just such an honor and a thrill to get to meet you and hear more about your story, and even just that period of time, sort of in the evolution of computers, games, the intersection with education. I sure hope we get more kind of like seminal products that are in the education space as we go. I mentioned this to you over email, but really was a thrill for me when my youngest Ivy came home from grade school, talking about Oregon Trail, not knowing that I had played it, and then we played it, together. And it was
because of me. I gave it to him for Christmas.
Yeah. Okay, very cool.
Well, thanks again for spending an afternoon with us and hanging out.
Oh, it's been fun. I love this conversation. Let's do it again sometime.
All right, right on. Right
We got to make another Oregon Trail.
All right. You need the reason, right?
Yeah, we do a reboot. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be
All right.
great.
Very cool.
All
Thanks.
right, cheers.
We'll see you.
Alex and Eric, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to The Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media, lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Production support by May Lee with community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.